I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your very busy schedules, your critical work that you're doing to join OVW's Legal Assistance for Victims program today. And as you all know, we will be providing an introductory informational session on the LAV program's Special Funding Initiative, Expanding Legal Services Initiative, ELSI for short. And we hope that you will find the next 30 minutes or so helpful as you consider the legal needs of your own communities, your own organizational capacity and needs, and the possibility of expanding legal services and representation capacity within your own organization. So I just want to do a quick introduction for our LAV staff who is with us today. Lauren Nasikas is our Associate Director. Miranda.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to echo you in welcoming everyone and thanking you for joining us. We're really excited about this initiative.
Yeah. And Miranda Baxter, who is one of our program specialists. Maria Flores. Oh, sorry. Maria Flores, who's also one of our program specialists. And Chanel Walker, I'm not sure, might be with us, is our program assistant. And myself, Simone Bowie, who is a program specialist as well. So just really briefly, I wanted to...
Simone?
Yep.
So, I just wanted, it looks like Nadine's on too, so I didn't know if we wanted to introduce her as well.
Yes. I'm sorry, I don't see
a surprise special guest.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I meant to give you all a heads up, but good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nadine Neuville. I am Deputy Director for Grant Development and Management with the Office on Violence Against Women, and just excited about this special initiative designed and going to be implemented by our fabulous Legal Assistance for Victims unit. Happy to be able to join you.
So glad you can join us, Nadine. Thank you. So just a really brief roadmap of what we will cover today so that hopefully, you will have, idea of what to expect, but also have a better understanding by the end of this webinar, what our LAV program, just sort of general overview of our purpose, who we fund, what activities we fund, and then we will move into the Expanding Legal Services Initiative. We will provide a general overview of the expanding of ELSI, its purpose, who's eligible to apply, when you can apply, where to look for information about applying. And then we will move on to our LAV award process. Since ELSI will be an LAV solicitation, we will provide a broad overview, pretty broad overview of the general steps involved in our LAV solicitations generally, from application to award selection. And these are the steps that apply to our standard solicitation, as well as our special funding initiative that we will be reviewing today. We hope to be able to share a few helpful hints during this time leading up to the release of the solicitation. There are a few things that you can do to start assessing your own organizational capacity and interest, and perhaps some foundational research you might want to do as you consider, again, your capacity and interest in applying for ELSI. Then we hope to end with a short Q&A to give you all opportunities to ask some questions. And to that end, if you have questions along the way, feel free to drop them into the chat, and we will make sure to have a chance at the end to review each of the questions and hopefully be able to get to all of them. So right now, I will turn it over to our program specialist, Miranda Baxter, who will share some general information about OVW's LAV program.
Hello, everyone. As Simone said, my name is Miranda Baxter, and today I'm just going to provide some information about the LAV program. In essence, LAV is intended to make civil and criminal legal services more available for victims of the 4 VAWA crimes, which, as I'm sure you know, are domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking. And the way the program does that is by granting funding to organizations that provide comprehensive, direct legal services to victims in matters that are either related to or arise out of sexual and domestic violence. Next slide, please. So at their core, LAV-funded organizations are providing victims with access to trained legal professionals who understand how to navigate all those complexities of cases that involve sexual and domestic violence. And to be sure that grantees are able to provide victims with the legal help they need, it's important to note here that the LAV program requires that all funded projects include at least one licensed attorney who can provide holistic legal representation to victims. That said, grantees can and do often incorporate trained legal advocates into their projects as well. Then the other thing I want to note is that the LAV program does not support representation or services related to criminal defense. So to clarify, grantees can use LAV funds to become involved in criminal matters as long as the victim is not the target of the criminal charges. So for example, someone might reach out to an organization and ask for legal representation after they were sexually assaulted and seeking criminal defense. But LAV funds cannot be used to support cases where the victim has been charged with a crime. Let's see, LAV funds also cannot be used to support representation of a defendant in a criminal matter. Next slide. So I just mentioned that LAV funded projects have to include at least one licensed attorney, but there are a few other project level eligibility criteria as well. And though I'm not going to be going over each of them today, I do want to quickly mention the types of organizations that are eligible for LAV funds. And those organization types are private nonprofits, publicly funded organizations, as long as they are not acting in a governmental capacity. Law schools are a really good example here. We also fund territorial organizations, that is non-governmental, nonprofit organizations that are located in any of the U.S. territories. We also fund tribal governments, and then finally tribal organizations that are located in the U.S. or again in any of the U.S. territories. Next slide. And here are a few examples of some types of organizations we've funded in the past. Among the nonprofits, we've had grantees that were community-based organizations, multi-service organizations, legal aid organizations, and then some legal foundations and pro bono programs as well. We funded law schools and statewide coalitions, tribal organizations and governments, mixed service providers that partner with legal providers, and then finally some medical legal partnerships as well. And that list is certainly not exhaustive, but we hope that gives you a better picture of exactly what an average LAV grantee might look like. Next slide. So as we all know, sexual and domestic violence cases are certainly not one-dimensional, and they often involve multiple areas of law, which is part of why we stress that our projects have to involve trained attorneys and advocates that can provide comprehensive legal services to victims. But more specifically, LAV cases often involve family law. Very often they deal with abuse prevention or protection orders. Some grantees do a lot of work in the immigration or employment arenas, while others work with cases related to administrative, housing, or health-related law. Sometimes administration or protection order proceedings on college campuses come up. And then projects often provide services related to economic justice, particularly either consumer protection or debt relief. Language access is another one that comes up often. And then the last one I want to mention here is victim rights and restorative practices. And again, LAV funded organizations meet the needs of the victims and their communities by providing assistance with issues that really do span that list, which ensures that both adult and youth victims, as long as they're over the age of 11, have better access to legal assistance that at the end of the day can help them to provide keep them safe and protect their privacy. And with that, I will hand it back over to Simone.
Thank you for all that, Miranda. So now, hopefully that you all have had a sort of a general idea of the LAV program, if you were not familiar with it before, and the activities that the LAV program supports. I want to turn to ELSI, our Expanding Legal Services Initiative. ELSI is a second LAV solicitation that we are planning to release along with our standard LAV solicitation this fall. So those who are eligible for LAV awards might also be eligible for ELSI. So I just want to sort of clarify that up front, right? So if you're eligible for an LAV standard award, you might also be eligible for ELSI. But the difference here is that ELSI is limited to those who do not currently have an in-house program or unit or division that provides comprehensive legal representation services. So similar to the standard LAV solicitation statutory purpose, ELSI is also designed to strengthen civil and criminal legal assistance programs for adult and youth survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. But within that context, OVW and LAV created ELSI because in working towards that LAV statutory purpose, we recognize that some community-based organizations that do not currently have a legal program don't have one because they have historically faced challenges that made it very difficult to successfully compete in our standard LAV award solicitation. And so because ELSI exists to promote public safety and to increase public trust, our goal is to increase successful applications from community-based organizations, tribal governments, nonprofits who do not yet have a comprehensive in-house legal representation program, within their organization or agency. So, and also important to note that included in this ELSI effort, as we talk about organizations who haven't had the capacity to have an in-house program, ELSI awards or ELSI grantees will also receive training and technical assistance required to help to help the ELSI grantees build their capacity to establish one. I'm really sorry if you hear my dog barking in the background.
Simone, can I just take just a quick break?
Yeah.
And I love hearing your dog in the background, just because what you just talked about seems to be addressed one of the first, or maybe the only first question we got in the chat. So it's from the chat, it does sound like you already have maybe a legal services division, because you said you're already providing legal services and need more attorneys. So really, your program would apply to legal assistance for victims program.
I'm so sorry. Hold on one second.
And I don't know if Miranda or Maria have anything to add, but yeah, it sounds like you said you're looking for more attorneys. So to me, that says you already have attorneys. So ELSI wouldn't be for you. That's really for organizations, and not just social services agencies, but community-based organizations, nonprofit organizations that currently don't have the in-house capacity to provide legal services.
I apologize for that.
That's okay.
I'm really sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Were we able to answer that question, Lauren?
Well, I answered it. I don't know if I answered it efficiently.
Right.
I think the person will tell me, hopefully.
Okay, great. Perfect.
Julie will let me know if she needs more information.
In the chat, she did note that you broke up a little bit, so she couldn't hear you all that well.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Well, just really quickly, it sounds to me like your program would probably want to apply to our regular legal assistance for victims program. Based on what I'm reading, it looks like you already have a legal services division or already providing legal services with attorneys at your organization. So ELSI may not be the solicitation to apply to, but the legal assistance for victims, regular solicitation certainly would be where you would want to what you'd want to look at and apply to.
That's right. And we'll definitely have a dedicated section at the end for a Q&A. So if additional questions come up, or as you hear details about the presentation unfold that speak to that particular question, just, put it back in the chat and we'll make sure we get to it. So again, just reemphasizing what Lauren Masikis just mentioned, and sort of emphasizing that while our standard LAV solicitation may support proposals that already have existing in-house legal programs, and they may also support proposals that do not have programs that do not have a current in-house legal program, ELSI is different in that from the standard LAV solicitation that ELSI can support only those organizations that do not have an in-house division or unit that provides a legal representation, but wish to establish one from the ground up. So again, and kind of emphasizing this question because I know that this question comes up for folks a lot, and there can be a little bit of confusion between ELSI and our standard solicitation. So those who are eligible, one way to think about it is that those who are eligible for the LAV awards may also be eligible for ELSI. They may very well be, but ELSI is limited to those who do not currently have an in-house program or division to provide legal services. Okay. The LAV award process, which also is applicable to the ELSI award process, and this is very general. Dates and duration absolutely can and do vary, but currently we do estimate that the ELSI solicitation, as well as our standard LAV solicitation, will be released sometime in November or December in the next month or so of 2022. And you'll definitely want to take a, kind of keep an eye out for that, because in the solicitation, you will be able to find information on the length of the award, budget caps, specific deadlines, and other important requirements for ELSI that we don't have the details for today. And typically deadlines for LAV applications, all LAV applications are usually between 6 to 8 weeks after the solicitation is released. After the solicitation is released and applications are submitted, the applications go through an internal basic minimum review process. Then they go through peer review. So folks on the ground doing the work, just like yourselves, assist in the peer review process. Then it goes through an internal review and final selection process. And then most grants will start in October 1st, the year after. So specifically for ELSI this year, it would start in October of 2023. Again, I just want to emphasize the work process timeline can and does change. It's definitely in flux, so just be sure to bookmark the OVW open solicitation page and kind of check back when the release of solicitations are there. Okay, so who may apply? All right, so nonprofit organizations, just like our LAV standard solicitation, tribal organizations, tribal governments. Examples of that include domestic violence, sexual assault organizations, community-based organizations, and multi-service organizations. Those are just examples. And I just want to note, again, that if you're not eligible for ELSI, so there may be folks who are watching this and they say, well, ELSI doesn't apply to me. You may still be eligible for the standard LAV solicitation. Okay, I just want to kind of note that at the outset here. Okay. And for entities who are receiving LAV funds under a current award, if you are currently receiving LAV funds under a current award, you are eligible if you are a lead grantee within an LAV award that is ending September 30th of 2023. And you do not have an in-house unit, division, or program that provides legal representation services. Also, if you are currently an MOU partner or subrecipient on a current LAV award that ends September 30th, 2023, or prior to that, and you do not have an in-house division or unit, like you yourself as the MOU partner or subrecipient, you do not have an in-house division or unit or program that provides legal representation services, you're also eligible for ELSI. Okay, so next, we just want to talk a little bit about the priority consideration. So in an effort to strengthen legal responses and reduce violence in communities, we also recognize that survivors tend to seek assistance from organizations that share their cultural and linguistic history. So ELSI, similar to our LAV standard solicitations, will support the following OVW priority areas. You'll see there, number 1 and number 2, advancing racial equity. And what we mean by that is advancing racial equity as one component of ending domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking. And number 2 there is improving services, improving outreach, civil and criminal justice responses, prevention and support for survivors of the 4 violent crimes, particularly those in LGBTQ and immigrant communities. So what does that mean for LAV and standard solicitation actually, and for ELSI? Is to be considered a priority applicant under one of those 2 LAV priority areas, 1 or 2. The lead applicant must be either a culturally specific organization, right? Or a population specific organization. And particularly one that is serving LGBTQ or immigrant populations. And so if your lead applicant falling under one of those two categories, then what that means is your application may be given special consideration in the process of being selected. I do want to note that entities and organizations and programs who do not fit into one of these priority areas, you're still eligible for ELSI. You should not be discouraged from applying for ELSI if you don't fit into a priority area. You're very much potentially still eligible. These are just priority consideration areas. Okay. So a few things that, if you haven't already done, if you're new to OVW, new to LAV, there are a few things you can do as you prepare for that all-important solicitation to be released. Again, it's the solicitation that you really want to make sure you read through to kind of understand the duration, the budget caps, the requirements for ELSI. But what you can do now is review our past LAV solicitations. They're not ELSI solicitations, it's not, there are standard solicitations, but that can give you a pretty good idea of the sorts of requirements that will be in the ELSI solicitation. Another thing you might want to do is review past successful projects. Our office, the Office on Violence Against Women, every 2 years, we have to provide a report to Congress on our activities and the effectiveness of our activities carried out with our grant funds. And so you might find there what types of activities have LAV award recipients worked on in the past that have been successful, what comprehensive legal projects have been successful previously, and get a sense there of past awarded projects that have been successful. The OVW website is chock full of a lot of information. Sometimes it may feel dense, but in the far left-hand column, there are these little section areas or category areas, a lot of resources, too many resources. But if you explore the section on how to apply for award funding, I think as you click on how to apply for award funding, resources for applicants, there's legal service, you scroll down, the Legal Assistance for Victims program is there. Just be curious and explore and kind of look around. And then finally, what I'll say is just so that you don't miss the release, if you, and we'll make sure to share this link in our chat group, or if, when we send out the slide deck, you can sign up and get an email alert whenever a new OVW solicitation is released, including the one that we will release for ELSI. So, or you can check the website regularly, but sign up and you won't miss it. And the last one I have here is become a peer reviewer. So, as we mentioned before, the ELSI award process does go through a review and selection process, just like the standard LAV solicitation, and this includes a peer review process. Some of you may be familiar with that already. And the peer review process includes a process whereby individuals, just like you all, provide a peer review of the applicant's application. And it's where OVW, we convene a panel of domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking experts, again, just like you all, to evaluate those proposals based on the ELSI requirements or our OVW requirements, depending on the OVW program. So every year, OVW programs across the office, we're in need of highly qualified individuals to conduct this critical peer review step. And so again, that includes victim advocates, legal professionals, others with expertise on issues and service provisions to victims as they relate to violence against women in their communities and regions. Again, just like you all here today. And so if you would like to learn more about peer reviewing for OVW or are interested in applying, you can go to the link there. Again, we'll make sure to send this slide deck out to folks. And if you also have general questions about becoming a peer reviewer, feel free to email that email right there as well. And we'll make sure to send out that email address, the links in the slide deck. You will all get a copy of this. I've also included here, we've also included additional links to those that we referenced during the presentation. They're clickable once you receive a copy of the slide deck. So you can go to it, and I believe maybe we may have included some of it into the chat. Okay.
Can I just add really quickly?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm a slide late, but based
sure.
when you want to be a peer reviewer, one thing that we do make sure is that you can't be if you're selected to be an OBW peer review, you would not be reviewing on the peer review panel for the program in which you're applying. You would be placed on a different program.
That's a good point. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So, does anyone have any questions? Or Miranda, can we go through any,
Yes.
Are there any questions in the chat?
Yep, there are several great questions in the chat. There have also been a couple people who have very patiently had their hands raised for a while. So I am going to invite Rosario. If you would like to unmute yourself and ask your question, you can do so now. Rosario, we can't quite hear you, but I do see that you've unmuted. Okay, it looks like we're having a little bit of trouble with audio. If you can place your question in the chat, then we can maybe move to the next person with their hand raised, and then we'll shift to the chat after that. Okay, so Aparna, if you would like to speak, you may do so now.
Certainly raised my hand, so that might have been a technology thing. But I do have a question now that you asked. So our program is really small, where we just cover legal fees for clients. So that wouldn't be an established legal program. It's just us providing some fees to help clients obtain lawyers, right?
So I'm sorry, I think maybe I'm having a hard time hearing you. So your question is that currently you provide legal fees for folks who need assistance for legal representation, but you don't have an in-house legal representation program. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So Aparna, yes. So that is something, if you do not have an in-house comprehensive legal representation program, and I would say that providing, fees for the legal fees for those who need it does not constitute an in-house comprehensive legal representation program, then you would be eligible to apply for ELSI. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. So then I guess my follow-up question would be, the purpose of this program is for us to actually have in-house legal representation, correct?
Yes. So the purpose of ELSI is to help establish an in-house legal representation, legal services, like a comprehensive legal services program in-house for organizations who do not yet have one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. All right, we are going to go ahead and move over to the chat. Rosario was able to submit her question via chat, and she was curious whether they can apply even though they are a sub-grantee with other LAV recipients.
So if you are a sub-grantee receiving LAV funds, and you're a sub-grantee, an MOU partner sub-grantee, and you do not currently have an in-house legal program, then you are eligible.
Great. Okay, we will go ahead and move on to the next question. One person asked whether their programs would have to provide every single type of legal service that was listed earlier in order to be eligible for either ELSI or LAV.
So no. So applications could include those areas. Those are examples of areas of law that we have seen applications include based on the needs of their communities. So it would really depend on the need of your particular geographic, sort of community. And it's definitely not necessarily going to include all of it. So short answer is no, it does not need to include all of those areas of law. But those are just common, legal needs of survivors across the board.
Great. Our next question is asking from the perspective of a tribe, and they're curious whether they're eligible. They have a criminal prosecutor who's not part of their program, and they've also outsourced some cases to pro bono attorneys who, again, are not officially part of their program, but they can assist clients who need legal services. So this person is curious whether LAV allows them to hire their own program licensed attorney.
So if the question is whether LAV, like our standards, like if the question is for specifically for ELSI, like if you're contracting or able to, like, currently have the capacity to work with external legal providers, but don't have an in-house legal program, are you eligible for ELSI? Then yes, you are. So I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question correctly. If the question is LAV generally, do we allow folks to hire an in-house attorney, like generally for under the standard solicitation? Then yes, you can under the standard solicitation. And also that is what exactly specifically what the ELSI initiative supports, is that hiring of the in-house and creating and establishing an in-house legal program. I hope that answers your question. Great. If not, go ahead and put it back in the chat, or you can feel free to raise your hand.
Absolutely. Okay, the next question is again about the legal areas that were mentioned earlier in the presentation. This person is wondering whether the list is exhaustive or whether they might be able to help clients with an issue that that presents itself that it wasn't squarely in any of those categories. And the example they gave was an animal ownership issue where an abuser might take a pet from a victim.
Okay, I might use a helpline and call upon Lauren to help me out with that. But no, it's not exhaustive. It's definitely not exhaustive area. And I believe that if it's an area of law that impacts a survivor's safety and privacy, right, and that's what we're concerned with. But I'll let Lauren.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I was going to say that the list is certainly not exhaustive. I think there was a couple of questions there, but you're right, Simone. I mean, this example, I would assume, I imagine it's part of the case. So the client is a victim and this is part of the issue. So yes, that could be part of the services and part of the representation that you are providing to the victim.
Great. Okay, we'll move on to the next question then. Christine asked, is the expectation that ELSI funds establish in-house legal assistance programs, meaning a service provider hires their own lawyers or alternatively engages in a model where a shelter subcontracts with legal aid? Is that acceptable under ELSI?
It sounds like there are two examples in there, like two scenarios that are being offered. The first one, is it acceptable to hire an in-house attorney to provide the legal services? Yes, that is exactly what ELSI supports, if I understood that question correctly. The second scenario, where you contract with a legal aid office or legal services to provide the legal representation, then that sounds like that would be more of a standard LAV application, so solicitation application, and not specifically for ELSI.
Great. Okay, Melissa asked, would providing financial assistance to clients for legal fees be an allowable activity under this grant?
Under ELSI? Mm-hmm. Well, currently under our standard, under our FY22 and FY22 standard solicitation, it is allowable. It is something that we support. The details for ELSI have not yet been finalized, but will be finalized and obviously included in the solicitation once that is released. And so you can find those details there.
Awesome. Okay, I think that we've kind of covered this ground a little bit, but for the sake of clarity, we have a couple folks who I think are still slightly confused on this next part. So I'm going to go ahead and ask this question just to make sure everybody is nice and crystal clear. Would a program be able to contract with a licensed attorney, or would the attorney need to be exclusively employed by the recipient organization for ELSI?
I think I'm going to say again, like those sort of specific scenario details, and that's a great question, have not been completely finalized by LAV and OVW, but we do expect to do so, and that should be clarified certainly by the time the solicitation is released. So you should be able to find that in there.
Okay, the next question is, if our current award only provides full, or our current project only provides full scope representation and immigration, but does not have an attorney on staff, would they be eligible for LAV or ELSI? I think I understood that question correctly, Elizabeth. If I did not interpret that, then please let us know in the chat.
So it sounds like there are two questions there. Is that appropriate for the standard LAV solicitation? And then the second part is if it's appropriate for the ELSI solicitation. Yes, definitely for the standard LAV solicitation, for sure. That's perfectly fine and permissible under the LAV standard solicitation. Under the LAV ELSI solicitation, I just want to make sure I understand the question. You have, and maybe Miranda, you might have to read that back to me, is that they have an immigration legal program, but not an in-house legal attorney. I mean, an attorney or a lawyer, is that right?
That's the way I interpreted the question, yes.
Okay, so perhaps you might be providing like immigration legal services as a DOJ accredited organization, possibly. And that is an excellent question. And again, some of the details for ELSI have not been finalized, and I'm sorry to have to kind of keep defaulting to some of these answers as you all ask really great questions. But some of the details, have not been completely finalized, and I would say that's another one. Again, unless Lauren, you have something else to add there, I would say, those details will be ironed out and finalized and be able to find that in the solicitation.
Yeah, no, I agree, Simone. We're working on it, and things haven't been finally approved yet, so we're really not in a position where we can talk about the specific details. But certainly, like if the purpose sounds like something your organization wants to participate in, and once the solicitation's out, you should be able to get all those details. In addition, once the solicitation's released, we do what we call pre-application webinars. So once it's released, we'll have another webinar where we'll go through the solicitation, and people will be able to ask, specific questions based on what they're seeing in the solicitation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Great point.
Great. Thank you both. The next question is, our program is contracted with a lawyer, but they are part of a separate organization that does not count as in-house legal services, correct? And I can actually answer that one and just confirm that, yes, indeed, that is correct. You are understanding that correctly. The question after that, would we be able to use the funds to include hiring a legal assistant who would work on becoming BIA accredited?
Oh, I see. So the question is, could ELSI support a legal program, an in-house legal program that supports a BIA accredited individual? I don't see why not, but I'm not sure if the other part of that question is, would there be an in-house, like an attorney that's part of the project?
It is that definitely they could apply to the regular legal LAV solicitation to do that for sure.
Great. Okay, we will move to the next question. Let's see. But before we get there, Melissa did clarify in the chat. She was saying yes, hiring an attorney as well, in case we needed a little.
Oh, okay. In addition to the BIA accredited individual, so they would both be in-house. Yes, that would be part of the in-house legal program, and so that would be, you would be eligible. That program could be funded under ELSI.
Great. Okay. I am moving to the last question in the chat. And that question is there a requirement or limit on the number of attorneys and or advocates working for an ELSI applicant?
A requirement on the limit, like the maximum number?
Or a limit, either one.
Or limit. I don't think that, I mean, we haven't completely finalized the plan, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm reading it correctly, like the limit, if you're hiring everyone with our grant funds, the limit would probably be based on how much money that you're receiving from us. But I mean, in terms of setting up in-house legal services programs or legal representation programs, you know, however big you feel like there's a need, basically we're helping you create the structure and the ability, the mentoring, you know, the supervision, all of that. And then depending on your, you know, your financial situation would be how big and how many attorneys you could hire. But I don't see our solicitation specifically saying, you know, you can only create a program with X number of attorneys.
Right. That's not a specific restriction that we would typically include.
Marina, I saw a couple other questions. I think it looked like a couple people asked if we could provide more, like what we keep saying comprehensive in-house program. What do we mean by that? Does it mean having attorneys in-house? I don't know if Simone wants to talk to that, but yes, Jen, but I don't know if you want to, you know, say a little more about that.
Yes. So, that's a great question. Comprehensive. What we really mean by that is that in-house legal services. It's not just a legal advocate providing sort of court accompaniment. That can absolutely be included as part of the program, but it also includes an attorney who's funded under the program, who's also providing that representation services, like, you know, attorney representation services. So that's what we mean by the comprehensive.
I saw one other question. It's kind of the answer is, you know, again, we're not exactly sure, but someone had asked about how many awards we would make under ELSI. Again, we're trying to, you know, we'll figure that out. I mean, a very, very broad range, could be anywhere from like 4 to 6 to 10. So, but we would have that information in the solicitation when it's released. It looks like Nadine has a question, her hand up at least.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the comprehensive question one more time. When we started using that term with LAV, our goal was to support projects that weren't just limited to protection order representation. I would sort of reiterate, though, what the team has said, that we haven't completely defined, or they haven't completely defined the parameters of ELSI. So they may, in the end, determine that they are willing to support projects that are limited to protection orders. But initially, we wanted to make sure that projects were also doing things like divorce and custody representation. So that was sort of the thinking behind the use of the term comprehensive.
Thank you, Nadine.
Awesome. It looks like we had a couple other questions come in. The first is, if the application is accepted, will there likely be an opportunity for renewal for the next application process? And if not, can they apply for LAV to continue on with their project?
So the answer to the first question, will there be an opportunity for renewal? Those are details. Again, I'm so sorry to have to kind of keep defaulting to that answer, but we're definitely working on these details. We're definitely working on it, and it will be in the solicitation once that's released, as to whether, you know, there will be an opportunity for renewal of the specific ELSI award. And then the second question is, if not, would they be eligible to apply for the standard LAV solicitation? And yes, yes.
Awesome. Okay, we have one more question in the chat, and please let me know if I'm not interpreting this correctly, Lamia. It says, we have a DOJ in-house, but we want to apply so we can partner with family law attorneys. Will we be eligible under ELSI?
DOJ in-house. It sounds like you're saying that you have a DOJ accredited representative in-house, so maybe you provide just immigration legal services, and you would like to expand to be more holistic or comprehensive, and hire a family law attorney in-house. Is that how you read the question again, Miranda? I'm sorry.
That was how I interpreted
Okay.
it. Yeah, but
Okay.
if somebody would like to clarify, then please do.
So I think similar to another question that was asked as to if there's already an in-house legal program providing just immigration legal services, would hiring a family law attorney and creating a family law sort of legal program to be added to that immigration legal services, would that program be eligible under ELSI? And I think, and Lauren, please correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that is also another detail that we are still ironing out and working on finalizing and going through that process of finalizing, those details. And it will be included in the solicitation.
Yeah, I agree. But it looks like Lamia added not hire, but maybe partner or pay as a consultant.
So not hire the family law attorney. So it's so
to me, that sounds really like the LAV.
That sounds like a
LAV.
standard solicitation. Yeah, it really does. If you're not trying to create an in-house comprehensive legal program or in-house legal representation program, and you want to contract with an attorney, that is definitely something that you can apply for under our standard LAV solicitation. And we hope we understood your question correctly. So again, let us know in the chat if we didn't.
Great. Okay, there's another person asking whether there's a link to read the grant program opportunity. And I'm unclear whether that means LAV or ELSI, but I think we can answer both just to be safe.
We will definitely share the link, and I don't know if we can do it in the chat now, but if not, then we'll definitely make sure they are in the slide deck, and we have the emails to all of the registrants today. So yes, we can definitely share a link to the open solicitations and closed solicitations for OVW.
Yeah, but that being said, as Simone had mentioned earlier, the one for ELSI and for the regular LAV have not been posted yet for 2023. You could look at previous regular LAV solicitations under the closed solicitations, but as Simone had mentioned, that'll give you, it's not the same as ELSI, but it'll give you a good idea of kind of the things we ask for and what's required of grantees. And hopefully, November, early December, both of them will be posted on our website.
Great.
Great. It looks like that is the last of our questions.
Actually, I think somebody, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at one other little thing here. Somebody may have asked or mentioned in the chat, do they have to address all 4 crimes, all the VAWA crimes, and in order to be eligible? And no, you don't have to address all of the crimes.
Great. Okay, I think that's the last of the questions, so we can go ahead and close. Thank you so much to everyone for attending. We hope that you learned a lot about the ELSI program. And please, if you have additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. There's an email address in the slide deck as well that you can contact if you would like some additional information.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.